Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So, hold on a second. I'm going to make the background more beautiful. Okay, get rid of the chair. Put the recorder on. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasati Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. And this is our fifth in our series of talks on self-envy, which is an interesting topic, self-hatred and self-love. And we've been talking about how the concept of self-love, which seems to be a foreign concept to devotees, and it tends to indicate that we're self-absorbed or self-obsessed, is not the way we would perceive it materially, but it's taking care of our spiritual lives. Now, one thing that's very important, I'm just bringing up a document. One thing that's very important is understanding that Prabhupada wants us to be happy. So being happy is actually part of our service. When someone wasn't happy, it indicated to Prabhupada that there was a problem in their Krishna consciousness. Because if you are Krishna conscious, then you would be happy, right? So it is our service to Prabhupada to engage in Krishna consciousness in a way that we're happy. And it's not that we're trying to be happy in a personal way. But if we're not happy in Krishna consciousness, there's two problems. We may give up Krishna consciousness and we may not be able to share Krishna consciousness well with others. So being happy as a devotee means or indicates that I'm well situated in Krishna consciousness. And it indicates that I will be able to communicate or share Krishna consciousness because I'm sharing my own happiness. So that's the idea. So I think that's important, don't you? Now, materialistic people will say, I'm not happy, and they'll engage in sense gratification. So obviously, when we're talking about being happy, we're not talking about happiness from sense gratification. We're talking about being happy in Krishna consciousness. And then one might say, but the desire to be happy is material desire. And it is. But if the desire to be happy in Krishna consciousness is so that I can remain in Krishna consciousness, so that I can better serve Prabhupada and serve my spiritual master, then that desire is good. And it's you could say it's purely motivated. I want to be happy so I can be a better devotee. If I'm not happy, I will look for happiness in something else. Does that make sense? So, param drishta nivartante, Krishna is saying in Bhagavad Gita, if you get a taste, then you will let it go. So I have a question, how to be happy in Krishna consciousness. By being Krishna conscious, one of the reasons we're not happy is because we take a little bit of Krishna consciousness and then we renounce a little bit of the material world. But if you take a little bit of Krishna consciousness, it has to be enough to, like when you're baking, we don't use eggs, so you have to use an egg replacer, which I believe is like potato starch or corn starch. So you have to replace it. Okay, you can't you can't enjoy this because it's not good for your Krishna consciousness. You have to replace it with something. So if you don't replace it with enough Krishna consciousness, then what are you left with? You're left with, you've renounced something that you used to enjoy, and now you have nothing. You have nothing left. Krishna consciousness is blissful. Yes, Bimal, you can watch because this is the right time. It's a good time for England now, right? It's like 2:30 or something. And it's Sunday, so what are you doing Sunday afternoon? Good time, yeah. So if you it's an interesting concept that we need to be happy in Krishna consciousness, but we need not at the same time have a desire to be happy. At the same time, we should have a desire to be happy in Krishna consciousness. So what does it mean? It means that if I want to be happy in Krishna consciousness, it's because I want to be Krishna conscious, and I know that if I experience the happiness of Krishna consciousness, then I will be satisfied in my spiritual life. And if I'm satisfied in my spiritual life, I won't be hankering for material life, or I won't be hankering for material things. So the desire to be happy in Krishna consciousness is really not a personal desire. It's actually a desire to better serve Krishna. Krishna, if I'm fulfilled, if I'm blissful, if I'm satisfied in your service, if I'm satisfied by hearing about you, if I'm satisfied by associating with the devotees, then because I'll be peaceful, I won't be hankering after anything material. So therefore, the desire to be happy is fairly purely motivated for a devotee, especially a devotee in the beginning who's conditioned, because the devotee knows that if I don't experience the happiness of Krishna consciousness, I'm going to look for it somewhere else, because my nature is ananda, so I'll have to look for it somewhere else. So, as you progress in Krishna consciousness, one of the things that you learn is that you learn how, or you learn what you have to do, what you need to do to be able to get enough Krishna consciousness in your life to be happy. What are the things you like to read? Or let's say, you might say, well, if I read Bhagavatam, then I don't absorb as much as if I read Bhagavad Gita. Okay, so then read Bhagavad Gita. Or I absorb more in Krishna book. Okay, read Krishna book. Or I get more inspiration from learning shlokas than I do from deity worship. Okay, learn shlokas. The idea is to be absorbed. It's not so much what you do. Of course, there's certain minimal requirements. But aside from that, where do you get your inspiration? What helps you become absorbed in Krishna consciousness? Those things are important. So, one devotee said, we are like nectar hounds, like we hound nectar. And what that means is that, but we see that nectar, those things that make us happy in Krishna consciousness, are the things that nurture us. So it's not a material thing to want to be happy. We want to get those things that nurture us. So we might think, okay, I have a little time, let me learn some shlokas. Or I have a little time, let me just read Bhagavad Gita, just the verses. Sometimes I do that. It's really very powerful. Or I have a little time, let me chant some extra rounds. And we're thinking, I want to get more out of Krishna consciousness. I want to get more absorbed. I want to get more nourished. I want to feel happy in my spiritual life. It's very, very important. And if you don't absorb yourself enough in Krishna consciousness, if you don't spend enough time getting what you need, then by nature, as a conditioned soul, you're going to look for that happiness in something or somewhere else. It's just like Prabhupada says, a devotee is free or can become free of sex desire. And you think, but that desire is so strong. How could anyone become free of it? But When you're in the middle of a kirtan, or you're in the middle of an amazing class, or some very, or taking prasadam, some very amazing situation in Krishna consciousness, it's the last thing you think about. It's just, you realize at that moment that what you're experiencing now is so far superior to anything you could experience any other way, that all those desires, they subside. And so our philosophy is bhakti paresh anubhava bhaktir, that bhakti, renunciation, is a byproduct of bhakti, so that we know that trying to renounce something is very difficult, but renunciation as a byproduct of experiencing transcendental bliss, that's natural. You don't have to do anything. So understanding that, a devotee tries to absorb himself sufficiently in devotional service. Whatever that means for you, like devotee was asking, but sometimes people disturb my sadhana. So if people disturb your sadhana, like maybe they're talking to you when you chant, then you're going to have to chant somewhere where no one's going to disturb you. Or you're trying to read, but you're being disturbed. Well, you'll have to read at a time when you won't be disturbed. Or read in a place where you won't be disturbed. This is what it means to be Krishna conscious, to do what is necessary. Some of you like to write, so writing your realizations. I have devotees write me to tell me about their spiritual life. It's called sadhana report, and if you want, you can do that. You go to my website, you fill out a sadhana report, you answer the questions, and it's really a reflection for yourself more than me, because it helps you reflect on what your challenges are, how you're dealing with them, and you look at your month, and what time you're getting up, how many rounds you're chanting, and so forth. So writing, Prabhupada said, is for self-purification. It's an exercise. So like Bimal was saying, how important self-love is. And being happy in Krishna consciousness, to me, is the highest form of self-love, or the highest reflection of self-love. Because sense gratification is not self-love. Because ultimately sense gratification is frustrating. Gratifying or fulfilling our needs, our human needs, so that we can be properly situated in a way that we can come closer to Krishna, that is the real form of self-love. And then when you execute devotional service, then you're loving yourself in the best way. And as Prabhupada once said, you're loving Krishna, you're loving yourself also because you're connected. So we've been talking about this in previous classes, how sadhana, taking care of yourself, is a spiritual form of self-love. And now the question, what we're discussing, had come up in how to be happy in Krishna consciousness. And my experience is that it's just you have to give yourself enough. It's like you're eating. And let's say you eat a meal, and there's two ways you're not satisfied when you eat a meal. Either you don't eat enough, or what you eat didn't taste good. And I'm sure you've had that experience. It's like, or maybe it's the same thing you've been eating every day and you're tired of eating it. And so you eat it. It either doesn't taste good, or you eat it every day and it's just not what you wanted, but that's all there was to eat. And so you eat and you're full, but you're not satisfied. Isn't it? So in Krishna consciousness, number one, you have to eat enough so you're full, and number two, you have to eat enough of the things that will satisfy you. And then you might say, well, that maybe it looks selfish. But the thing we have to realize is we're conditioned souls, and extricating ourselves from the material world, we can't imitate a pure devotee right away. It's like I want to be like a pure devotee right away, but you can't imitate that. It's a lot of devotees have this problem. They think, well, I know I should be on a certain level. So they try to imitate it, and later on they realize that because internally they're not on that level, externally they can't really imitate it. Or rather, they should deal with where they're at, and if they deal with where they're at, then they can advance from that platform. So yes, I need a lot of nectar. I need to do things that will nourish me in Krishna consciousness. I need service that will inspire me. I need to get enough nectar in my life. And if I get enough nectar, then I'm happy. If I'm not happy in Krishna consciousness, it's dangerous for my spiritual life. If I'm not happy chanting Hare Krishna, then I'm going to chant Baby I Love You. You all know that. If I'm not happy in Kirtan, I'm going to sing something else. If I'm not happy, if I'm not reading Prabhupada's books or getting enough nectar from reading Krishna conscious philosophy, I'll read some novel. If I'm not satisfying my senses in Krishna consciousness, I'm going to look for satisfying them elsewhere. And in the world today, there's so much sensual facility, it's because of smartphones. We didn't have it. And because of the technology, today, if you just want to hear somebody talk, but it's, high definition video, the introduction is beautiful music, they have a nice back, everything is just like, there's so much sensual stimulus just coming to us, the quality of the music, the quality of the recordings, then it's just so much better than it used to be. The quality of the movies, the effects, all this stuff. It's just incredible compared to what it was 100 years ago, where life was pretty simple. And so, we have more competition in terms of sensual stimulus and sensual input that we're getting from around us. One thing I noticed in India is that, especially in the villages, things are natural. When things are natural, they're more real. And when things are more real, then it's easier to detach from things which are made to look not so real. So in our society, things are kind of polished in a way that they look better than they are. And that's a problem. So my point is that what's surrounding us, the sensual stimulus that's surrounding us, people look better, at least it appears that they're happier. The clothes we wear, the food we eat, the cars we drive, they all are a lot better than they were, it seems, 50 years ago. At least the cars are better. We have more access to clothes, to food, different varieties of food. We have more access to things from around the world. There's more coming at us. So, just like when I was young, I played guitar, and now you can get a fairly decent guitar for very little money. In those days, you had to save your money, work, and so things are better. Cars are so much better now than they used to be. The stereo systems are amazing. The seats are more comfortable. So all of we have, you get a computer, you get all kinds of software, you can do all kinds of amazing things, you can make amazing videos and make amazing sounds. It's like endless what you can do. Yesterday, one devotee came over, I ordered some lighting video for my video studio, and we set it up, and then, as some of you know, I was given a fairly decent camera. And then we put everything up, and I said, the camera's so good, the lighting's so good, that it just makes I'm not using the lighting now, this is natural lighting. It makes the impression that this is like you're in a television studio. And so the quality is just so much better. The quality is so much better than it used to be. Everything is so much, the higher, high definition, televisions, the movie theaters. We went to see the Prabhupada movie. And in the movie theater, they were like first class seats in an airplane that lounged back. And it's like speakers everywhere, and climate controlled. Movie theaters weren't like that when I was young. Of course, they only cost 25 cents. But my point is that there's so much sensual stimulus and opportunity to enjoy materially that if you don't fill yourself up spiritually, then what happens? There's competition going on. And there's allurements all around us going on. So if you're full spiritually, then you're okay. So being happy spiritually is actually a service. There's a film called The Hare Krishnas, the story, the this, and the person who created it, and it's coming to London. It should be coming to London. And you can go on their website. I don't know it. I don't know the name of it. You have to see this film. Fortunately, I'm in it, which is so inconceivable that I'm in that film, but I am. And I feel so honored that I'm in it. All right, what's it called? Anyway, I'll try to get on my website so you can see, and then you can go to their website and find out where it's going to be. So if you're practicing spiritual life, part of your service is to be spiritually satisfied, to fill yourself up spiritually, because that gives you strength, and it's not selfish. That's the whole point. But if the motive is to grow spiritually and help other people grow spiritually, then the motive is pure. So I'm going to go back because there's a lot of questions. Somehow or other, this topic has certainly struck a chord, because the questions and comments are like flying in. So I have to just find them. Excuse me. So many questions came in that I... Oh, right, here's a question. I don't know, I think it's the last. There's so many questions coming in. Okay, we'll just have to deal with it as they're coming. Because, let's see. Sometimes people keep forcing others to be spiritually satisfied. If we're sincerely trying to engage in devotional service, but are not feeling the bliss, but rather empty inside, what is the reason? It could be, there could be many reasons. I'm just trying to straighten this out a bit. Excuse me. There could be many reasons. It's like, doctor, I'm tired. What's the reason? There could be many. But chanting Hare Krishna is the basis of our spiritual life and practice. So you want to look there first. You want to look at your own attitudes. Are you respectful to others? Are you appreciating others? Are you treating others as spiritual beings, or are you thinking of others in terms of your own gratification and control? You want to look at how much time you're involved in service, how much time you spend studying. You want to look at your motives, because the Bhagavatam says if your motive isn't pure, you'll never be satisfied. That even if you're doing something that's supposed to satisfy you, but your motive is not to satisfy Krishna, then it won't satisfy you. Because, you see, the thing is, it's so interesting. You can do something very pure, but you can do it with a very impure consciousness. So let's say I'm chanting Hare Krishna, but my motive is to get your recognition that I sing nicely. So I sit down, I do kirtan in a public assembly, and I'm doing it to impress people. So the mantra is pure, my motive is impure, so I won't feel at heart, I won't feel satisfied. I won't be able to experience the actual nature of chanting. What I'll be able to experience is only the pleasure, the temporary pleasure, which will soon leave me dissatisfied, of impressing people that I can play and sing nicely. But the actual bliss of spiritual life, which would have lasted and permanently purified me, is not there. So you also want to look at not only how much time you're spending in your spiritual life, but you want to look at the motivations, and you also want to look at service. Are you doing a service that inspires you? A lot of the reason people may not be happy in their spiritual life is they're not doing anything that connects with their nature. and therefore they're not inspired. So you have to look at your inspiration. And then right after this, like Bimo's saying, well, maybe somebody's forcing you or trying to put you in a certain area to do something or think in a certain way that is not resonating with you, to do some austerity that you're not yet able to do. So that could be a problem. You could be trying to, you could be very much concerned more about how you appear to others, how they see you, trying to please them in a way that gratifies your ego. That could be a cause. But if you're not chanting well or not chanting enough, that definitely will be a cause. Okay, let me go back. There's so many comments, I don't actually remember where they'd start, and then the new ones keep coming. Okay. Sorry, I can't. Maybe if I was doing this. I think, yeah. So, Nirmal Chandra says, how important are your surroundings, environment, to get this nectar? Very important, because we're controlled by our environment. If your environment is disorganized, if your environment is dirty, if your environment does not produce Krishna consciousness, inspiration, or and if the environment especially is about who your friends are, who are the people that have influence over you. That's one of the most powerful aspects of environment are the people in your environment. So who, just like even where you live in a particular city, every area has a certain mode. And even if you're not friends with people, you can feel their energy, and their energy does have an effect. Just like when you go to the holy dhams, Vrindavan or Mayapur, as soon as you get there, you can feel it. You don't have to associate with anyone per se, but the consciousness of all the people, all the devotees there, it's affecting you. So that's also a reality. You live in Holland, not the most pure place to live. So naturally, just by living there, the consciousness of the people that surround you affects you. So you obviously you need good association to uplift you. And material life can wear us down. Association with people who are not Krishna conscious or spiritually aware can pull us down. Reading the wrong books, watching the wrong movies, what you put on your walls, what you see. We were reading the other day where Prabhupada was saying that everything that we take in is affecting the heart. So that means what we're hearing, what we're seeing, smelling. Right now, I have perfume that was offered to Lord Nrsingadev. Can you smell it? Oh yes. So by smelling that, I'm purifying my mind through smelling something that was offered. Obviously tasting prasadam. So Prabhupada is saying everything that's coming through our senses is affecting us. It's affecting the condition of our heart. So I think the thing that affects us most is the immediate environment of the people we're with. And, the level of cleanliness, organization. There's a high-ranking officer in the army who said the first thing you do when you get up is make your bed. He said that has such a positive effect on your day that you just start being organized right away. So little things can make a difference. So one devotee who's a writer said before he writes, he cleans his room, he organizes and cleans, and then he can better write that way. So that's important. So Krishna Consciousness says, is it possible to overeat in Krishna consciousness? Meaning doing too much, not being ready for that. Yeah, overeat meaning not the food, but yeah. If you do too much, so it compromises the nectar and the sadhana and the regulation and the chanting and so forth, then you're out of balance. So you might say, okay, here's the balance. I have the scale. My hands are the scale. All right. So here's your spiritual practice, sadhana. Here's your service. Well, what happens sometimes is service goes up, sadhana goes down. All right, a little bit, that may be okay. But too much service, sadhana goes down. Or some people do all sadhana, no services. It's meant to be balanced. Well, actually the balance is more like this, because sadhana is part of the day and service is longer part of the day. But what would be too much service? Your sadhana goes below what you need to be fulfilled in your devotional service. So yeah, that's important. I mean, a lot of times, of course, service fulfills us, but my experience as being a devotee is that when you don't do enough sadhana, you can feel it. It's like eating. You know when you're hungry. No one has to tell you. You don't have to ask anybody, am I hungry? So if you're just honest with yourself and you're not getting it, you're not chanting properly or getting enough hearing and chanting, then you can feel it. And so you want to make sure you're full. That's very, very important, because if you're full in spiritual life, you'll be steady and you'll steadily advance and you'll be happy and you won't be stressed out and anxiety. Your normal state will be happy. That's the way Prabhupada wanted us to be. That's the way you are when you're in Krishna consciousness. Now you might have to deal with all kinds of difficult things. There may be some stress here and anxiety there, but your normal state will be happy, because that's the nature of someone who's on the spiritual platform. They're always happy. Yes, the world is stressful. There are difficult things to deal with. But your state of consciousness, if you're Krishna conscious, if you're getting enough, will be happy. Right? So Amrita says the sattvic environment, yeah, it's very important. I was just reading about that this morning. How to be happy with non-devotee parents? Make them devotees. Then you'll have one big happy family. It's not a good idea? You don't like that? And then she's saying, no, I can't make them devotees. They won't become devotees. Okay. Ask them to respect you and your desire to be Krishna conscious, and give you the room and facility to do your practice. Get married, move out. You know, this may sound funny, but I'm just going to tell you something for the record, that I know some devotees who have so much difficulty with their parents, they actually moved out of the country they lived in so that their parents couldn't be close to them. That's obviously was a very difficult situation. That was a dramatic, it's a true story. Actually, I could tell you many true stories about this. This happens many times. So I'm not telling you to move away from your parents. I don't know if you even live with them. But the principle in spiritual life is you want to create an environment and a situation where you can peacefully execute your service and your sadhana. So that's, you want to deal with your parents in a way that they give you that freedom to do that. You want to explain how important that is to you. And you want to explain to them that if they don't give you that freedom, it's going to harm our relationship. It's going to make it difficult. So, you know, it's important it's important to preserve your sadhana, and it's important for people in your life to understand what you need every day in your sadhana. I need this time. I need it. Just like my sister's watching, and when I visit her, she'll say, let's do this and that, and I'll say, well, just give me this time so I can chant. So let's go on a walk, and I'll say, okay, but I have to chant. We can't talk. Of course, we always end up talking. But it's like, I have, every day I've committed to do something, so I need that time. So once I finish, then okay. So like that. Yes. My sister's watching. That means she's up early, because this started at 5:30 her time. And she said it's really hot, like over 40 degrees where she is. 42 or 43, which is like 110. Better come to Florida. It's only 83. We're having a cold spell here. 83 is like 28 or something. We're having a cold spell. The weather has cooled down like 1 month early, so I don't know what's going on here. Okay, I'm getting through your comments. So Nimal Chandra says, there's so much we can do at home and stay strong. How important is it to live in a spiritual environment? How important it is to reduce sensuality? Extremely important. Because your environment affects you, and you affect your environment. So probably what's even more important to realize, and I've mentioned this before, but it's so interesting, is that some people say, my environment is toxic, or my environment is hurting my Krishna consciousness. But the fact is that a lot of what is hurting you in your environment are things that you created. You created your environment. So it's not always that the environment that's toxic is an environment that we have no control of. Sometimes the environment that's toxic is what we created. So I go into your house and there are 400 videos in a movie theater, and you say, I'm having such a difficult time. I spend so much time watching movies. I could actually be reading Prabhupada's books. I could be chanting more rounds. Yeah, probably if I had a 10-foot long video screen with a Bose surround system and 400 videos of the best movies ever made, I'd probably have trouble also. Most of us would. So, you have to think of these things, like how do you want your life to be? So it has to reflect outside how you want it to be inside, because the outside is going to affect the inside, right? You agree? So let's keep going. So Bimal's asking, is it okay to say no to people who force you to do austerity? It depends who they are. It depends what they're asking. So if you feel, let's say for example, you feel that doing some austerity would actually be good for you, let them force you. That's helpful. If you feel that austerity would be harmful for you, or you feel that it would stress you out and as a result would be harmful for you, then you can politely say, I don't think I'm ready for this now. Austerity, it has two aspects. One is austerity is a byproduct of spiritual advancement, and one is it's a way to become spiritually advanced. But it's no great credit to do an austerity and then fall on your face after it. Like, I stay up all night and then I sleep the next day. Great, or I fast today, tomorrow I eat twice as much. There's no advantage to that. So, but sometimes austerity is like a rubber band, and you pull it too far, it'll break. So there may be situations in which you can politely ask the person that, I appreciate your encouragement. I don't think I'm ready yet. But you have to consider, maybe it's very good advice and you should do what they're asking. Excuse me. It's allergy season. Do we incur karma in human form only? Yes. Therefore, you should become a dog and you don't have to worry. No, I'm only joking. Since I don't accumulate karma in the animal species, then I should become an animal, then I have no karma. No. How do we stay committed? You listen to my workshop on vows. I'm trying to stay, yeah. Prabhupada said temples are like medicines, a place for conditioned soul. Yeah, temple's like a hospital. Thank you. I get blessings when I sneeze. So it's good to sneeze because everyone will bless you. And blessings are very important. Okay. I should have been a comedian, right? Prabhupada was also funny, so we can be funny. You're saying the sound, there's some problem with the sound? Is anyone having problem with the sound? Let me know. Sound is fuzzy. Oh, okay. It shouldn't be. I'm going to move my computer. I think the problem may be the computer's too close to the phone. I'm actually recording on my phone. And this Samsung new phone, it puts out like all kinds of weird vibrations. There's some interference, and I'm trying to figure out where it's coming from. I'm not sure. Still there's interference? Well, I'm defeated. I thought it was coming from speakers, and I moved the speakers away. I thought it was coming from my computer. It could be. Okay, electrical wires. This is weird. I'm going to move the wires around. Yesterday was the same. The internet connection is weird. Okay, I will try a different microphone. And as a result of trying, well, I can't try a different microphone. I'll just pull the microphone out and we'll see if the microphone's the problem, okay? So hold on. Now, this was like supposed to be the ultimate setup. I have to be a little closer to you because I'm recording right into the phone. Is that better? Yeah, that's better. That is so disappointing that it would do that with this, because I bought this, spent my hard-earned money, so I could put this into the phone so I could use this mic, which is very expensive, and get this amazingly good quality sound so I could satisfy all of you. And the result is this. That is so disappointing. I'm going to have to end class and start crying. Okay, so be happy, everyone, in Krishna consciousness. That's very important. And then that idea of loving yourself, that also means that it's not a selfish kind of love. It's the same idea that I'm a spirit soul, I'm connected to Krishna. Krishna wants me to love him. And if I don't love myself, I won't take care of myself to love him. This is an equation. So to try to get this equation together. If me caring about myself and me caring about my relationship with Krishna, because Krishna cares about our relationship, they're all intertwined. Krishna wants a relationship with us. Now, he's inviting us, and we have to care enough about ourselves, about our own welfare, eternally, what will be the best thing for us, in order to have the impetus to have that relationship. So if my goal is I just want to enjoy my body, and I don't care about my relationship with Krishna, that means I'm actually envious of myself. From the spiritual perspective, by definition, I'm envious of myself. That's what it means. Unfortunately, but that's what it means. Krishna offers me an invitation. If I really love myself, I'll take the invitation, even though it may be difficult to qualify to go into a relationship with Krishna, but because he's asking, I take it. I take the invitation. That there has to be a sufficient degree of self-caring, not only to take the invitation, but to continue. To continue in service, there has to be a sufficient degree of self-love or self-caring. It's a very important point. If you don't care enough about yourself, somehow or other, you won't care enough about your relationship to Krishna, because what you have to do to have that relationship, you have to make some sacrifices. You have to give some things up. You have to take time away from what you want to do and do for your Guru and for Krishna. So self-love and love of Krishna, they're connected. If you don't care about yourself, if you don't care about your spiritual life, then you lose that relationship with Krishna. Does that make sense? So that's why I say, if you're slack in your spiritual life, you may want to look at this as a possible reason. That maybe there's a lack of self-love and a lack of self-care. Maybe that's why you feel this way. That's interesting, isn't it? Very interesting. So Krishna Consciousness and I, we had a discussion. We had a discussion about loving Krishna and Krishna loving us and self-love and does Krishna really love me? And one of the things we discovered is that, and we discussed this a little bit yesterday, that it's hard to feel that God loves me if we don't love ourselves. And so if I tell you God loves you, you might be thinking, and some people do, maybe not you, but some people do, well, why would he love me? I haven't done anything for him. I don't think he really loves me. Why, maybe he'll love me if I do something. But if you feel that God loves you, you want to reciprocate, right? Oh, he loves me so much. And so Krishna Consciousness was saying, in response to a class I gave last week, that I said, you don't act if you just understand something. You act when you feel it. So she was responding to the idea of understanding. I understand Krishna loves me, but if I don't feel it, then I don't give my full life, energy, time, commitment to going back to Godhead in this lifetime. And I feel like if I don't go back to Godhead, it's okay because he won't miss me. But don't you think that if you say, well, if I don't go back, not really, going to try or make sure or want or make the effort to go back to Godhead, don't you think that would be a lack of self-love? Not only a lack of feeling Krishna loves you, a lack of loving yourself, but the lack of feeling Krishna loves you is also stemming generally from a lack of self-love, of thinking that I'm not that valuable or worthy of Krishna's love, or valuable or worthy to even work on myself to get that love. So it's all tied together. And one of the things that you will see amongst the devotees who are doing very well in Krishna consciousness, they take good care of themselves, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. All these things are important. If you're not healthy physically and emotionally, it affects your spiritual life. And so, anyone who's advancing steadily in Krishna consciousness, anyone who's feeling the bliss of Krishna consciousness, if you just study their life, you will see not only are they dedicated to giving it to others, but they're taking care of it in their own life for themselves. they feel it very much in their, how to say, they feel this need that Krishna consciousness is like food, and I need to eat healthy food, and I need to eat enough of it. So I need to eat enough of those things that make me Krishna conscious, so that I can thrive in Krishna consciousness and I can give it to others. So taking care of yourself is an essential aspect of advancing, and taking care of yourself stems from a certain degree of love of yourself, that you would take the time to take care of your health, to take care of your emotional needs, to take care of your spiritual life. And, I think a lot of people who are not spiritual, maybe they're not spiritual because of a general attitude, that may be, or a lack of past pious or spiritual activities, but often it may be that they just don't care. And that is the symptom of self-envy, if we say, I don't care. But if you do this, it's not good for you. That a young child will say, well, I don't care. Isn't it? Don't eat that, it's not good for you. I don't care. When you're 75 and you look back at what you ate all your life and you realize that's why you're sick, then if you could have seen that when you were 10, you probably would have cared. Or if Krishna would have given you a little pain, you eat this is how you'll feel in 50 years. Oh, okay, I won't eat it. You would care. So there's also a study that was done, and they find that, well, maybe Vimal, this will help you answer your question, but I have so much on vows, you can get off my website. But people are more likely to follow through if they commit to another person than if they commit to themselves. So I think we all realize this. We commit and then we don't follow through. And so Bimal's asking, well, what could we do to be more committed? I think if you love yourself more, you'll be more committed. Because if you're committed to do something that's really good for you, and you have like this internal voice or consciousness like, who cares? It doesn't matter. I'm not valuable. No one's, I'm dead in God. Nobody's going to care, So what if I don't take care of my health? So I'll die 5 years earlier. Who cares? If you have that mentality, then it's likely you're not going to follow your diet, right? Who cares if I become Krishna conscious? If I don't go back to Godhead in this life, it'll be another life. Krishna doesn't mind, and so on and so forth. Generally, there's a little bit of lack, or a lot of lack, of self-love. That who cares? If ever that voice is who cares, it doesn't matter. That's a problem. I would say there's a defect in our psychology if we feel that way, that we should care. That I'm too lazy to do that. No. There's a lack of self-love. If we increase our sense of self-care, then we'll do those things. We'll be more committed to the promises we made to ourselves if we increase our care. We should care. But then naturally you're going to ask, well, how can I increase my care? How can I care more for myself? What is that? What is that switch? What is that switch within me that I could turn on that would make me care for myself? We need another 15 hours for that one. Okay, hold on. I'm just leaving you dangling now, because that's a question, actually, I'm not going to answer today, and I want you to think about it. Like, what can I do? What can I do that would help me switch from this I don't care? If I don't chant good rounds, I don't really care. I haven't read so much. I don't really care. It doesn't matter. I can always do it tomorrow. Or if I don't go back to God in this life, I have another life. I have so many lives. Krishna's given me so many lives. If we don't make it in this life, hey, there's a whole unlimited number of lives. What's the problem? That's all a lack of self-love. Or we can, as we've been calling it, even a a form of self-envy, that I'm working against, I'm doing something which isn't good for myself, or worse, I'm doing something which is bad for myself. You know, that is a very unhealthy psychology, and that unhealthy psychology can really be detrimental to our spiritual advancement, because we just, you know, we won't do things. Yeah, I know I should fast today, but it's too hard, so I'm not. No, you should do it because it's good for you. I know I shouldn't eat this, but I really like it, so I will. No, don't eat it. It's not good for you. If you have a little more self-love, you'll be able to say, no, I'm not going to do that. One of the most valuable things I think that I learned, well, I actually didn't learn it, Krishna revealed it to me, that I'd like to share with you, is this idea of when devotees say, I'm afraid if I go here, I'll do this. Or they're in India and they're coming back to the West and they say, well, I'm leaving India now and I'm afraid when I go back, I'm going to fall from the platform I'm at. Or they go to a japa retreat and they say, it's really good, but I'm afraid that I'm not going to be able to chant. I'm not going to be able to chant the way I'm chanting now. And all these concerns are really, if I was to rephrase them, all these concerns would be, I don't trust myself. That's actually what they mean, right? They're saying, I don't trust myself. I've just got so many wires here. I'm saying, you know, I'm afraid when I go back, I will do this. I don't trust myself. I'm afraid that if I go here, this will happen. I don't trust myself. I'm afraid if I travel alone for a few days, I'm invited somewhere, but I'll be alone. Maybe I'll do this. I don't trust myself. I'll be alone in this city. There's so much to do. I might just become deviated. I don't trust myself. Here's the little thought I want to leave with you about this, and this is, I think, is very powerful. It's a little mantra, you could say, affirmation, that Krishna revealed to me. If we have self-love, or we have enough of it, or some of it, then all we have to say is, well, number one, we wouldn't think that way. So once you get this, hopefully you'll never think that way again. But if you do think that way, the mantra is, no, I would never do that, because I love myself too much to allow myself to do anything which would be destructive or harmful to me. I love myself too much to do. I love myself too much to allow myself not to chant properly every day. I love myself too much to allow myself not to study, not to associate with it. Whatever it is, you can fill in the blank. I love myself too much to allow myself not to do this. I love myself too much to allow myself to do this, whatever it is. Watch movies all day. I love myself too much to allow myself to do this. So the reality is that if you develop that mentality, then you'll never ever say, I'm afraid, I don't trust myself, I'm afraid I might do this. You'll never say that again. Because now your self-love has reached a point in which you would never do that to yourself. So you're never afraid that you would do it, you just wouldn't. I'll never do that to myself. Like sometimes I think about something that I would like to have, or something I would like to enjoy that is just a very deeply rooted, conditioned desire. Or it could be the desire for pride, it could be envy coming out, it could be the desire to enjoy something which would be destructive for my devotional service. And I know these are conditioned desires, and I know it's not something I'd ever do. But there's always this little reminder, no, you would never do that, because if you did that, you would ruin your life, you would suffer tremendously, or you would ruin something in your life. So no, I'd never do that. So even though the mind may be allured by something, the heart says, no, you would never do that to yourself, because that would be destructive. So if you're having trouble controlling your eating, the amount or what you're eating, inform yourself a little more about health, and then you'll know what's good for you and what isn't, and that will help you, because then the more you love yourself, the more you can eat well. and the more you'll exercise, and the more you'll develop yourself emotionally, become emotionally fit. Like sometimes we have problems and we don't want to face them. But I would say also, it can be that we don't love ourselves enough to go through the pain of what we have to do to face these problems and to deal with it. So, if you really love yourself, it's amazing. Maybe love yourself is the wrong word. I don't know. Maybe that doesn't resonate with you. But if you care about yourself, then you'll look at your life and you'll say, okay, these things are good, but these things are not good. And how can I allow myself to live this way? Excuse me, I'm getting buzzed because that means I have a meeting in a half hour. And I have to go online for the meeting. So if you see things in your life that you're doing or you're not doing and it's creating repetitive problems, then here it comes again. Save me, save me. If you have more self-love, then you might just roll up your sleeves and say, no, we're going to do this, we're going to make this happen. Whatever that problem is, it could be a relationship problem, it could be a financial problem, it could be a health problem. It could just be something you've been procrastinating on forever. Excuse me. One of the symptoms of allergy is it feels like there's ants in my nose, and I know there aren't. It just feels like it. It's wonderful to have a body, isn't it? No, it isn't wonderful. It's wonderful to have a spiritual body. So, if you think, I'm not going to allow these situations to happen anymore. These situations are harmful to me. They're hurting me. Every time I do it, it hurts myself. Or I'm not going to allow myself to not have certain things I need by procrastinating on them, by not being able to roll up my sleeves and deal with them face to face and work on them and make them happen because they're difficult or it's uncomfortable or it's stressful. But the difficulty, uncomfort, and stress of my life is much worse. I'm going to make it happen. I'm going to do it. So self-compassion, self-love, self-care, whatever word you want to use, if you have more of it, it's more likely you're going to do what's best for you. So now I'm going to go back to Nirmal Chandra. Says, I totally agree. I have learned that self-love means becoming free of lust and embracing a celibate life. It is only now, after 34 years, I realize how many character defaults I have because I was not. Hold on. Because I was not free of lust. I thought I knew myself only to realize I know so little. I decided to start from scratch and step-by-step experience what works for me. Next chapter I'm working on now is food, because that goes hand in hand with lust, and food has such a big influence on your state of mind and emotions. Also, instead of running or only going to the gym, I started doing yoga. Yeah, so I think Nirmal Chandra realized how much he was harming himself. And he's been doing a lot of self-reflection and uncovering destructive habits, and now he's dealing with them. So he's both confronting and then not being lethargic about dealing with it. So he's going to improve. And this was an area in his life that he wanted to improve on. Because he's not married, he wants to be celibate. Well, he's initiated, so he took a vow to be celibate. And he realized that the eating is also very much connected with it. And he realized in the work he's doing that he has to forgive many people. He realized there was much more. He uses the word lust. Lust was influencing him in so many ways he didn't realize. So his success will increase. The more there's self-love, the more there's self-love, the more he'll take care of himself. So many times we do things, and after we do them, we think, why did I do that? I just hurt myself. Yeah, that's a good question to ask. And that's a question I'm asking you. Why do I do things which hurt myself? What's going on here? It's crazy. So, Krishna Consciousness has a question or a statement. When a devotee is having some serious psychological issues, should he or she take advice or help from professional psychologists or counselors? Or is it enough to chant better and practice Krishna consciousness? You can chant in prema, it's probably all you need. If you can chant in prema, then your psychological problems are not really a problem. Maybe a problem for your husband, but if you have love of Krishna, then it's, that's all you need. But generally, as conditioned souls, we're very much affected by our psychology. And I know some devotees will tell me that they're very much affected by their health. If they're sick, or if they're in pain, they say they just fall apart, they can't chant good rounds, they just kind of lose their whole impetus in Krishna consciousness. So if a person asks the question, how important is health in our spiritual life? Then we would naturally say, well, for you, it's really important because you're really affected by it. So how important is taking care of our emotional health? We'll see how much you're affected by it and say, well, is chanting enough? Well, if you're chanting and you're doing your sadhana and it's improving and the issues are going away, then obviously you don't need anything else. And if you're chanting, reading, and the issues are not going away, then you do need help, ideally from a professional who's a devotee. Because there may be problems that you just can't see, that only a professional can see. So we're not against psychology if we have serious issues that are seriously impacting relationships or Krishna consciousness or whatever, Sometimes your psychology may have an adverse effect on your relationship with your spiritual master because he didn't smile at you one day. He walked right by and he didn't smile, and now you hate him, or you're depressed, or you're thinking you need another guru. I'm serious. Okay, you think I'm joking. No, these things happen. And that's a psychological problem. It has nothing to do with your relationship with your guru. And that would be unfortunate to have a relationship, to have a problem with your spiritual master because of your own psychology. Or you become so codependent on your spiritual master that when he doesn't contact you, every week, you think he doesn't like you, or you become depressed or upset. That's not healthy psychology. So we have to be careful, because an unhealthy psychology could damage to one degree or another the most sacred of relationships. And sometimes it can even damage our relationship with Krishna. When things happen in our life that shouldn't happen. And we think, Krishna, why did you do that? And we think Krishna is responsible for everything in our lives, and we're not. So, yes, in my counseling work, I definitely meet devotees. And although I have a lot of tools in my toolkit of counseling, I definitely meet devotees whose problems are very, very deeply rooted, and I am not able to help them, and they need people who are trained in dealing with past traumatic issues. Because some people have had past traumatic issues. And also, in some cases, it may be a psychological or biological disorder that's affecting one's psychology. Maybe a hormonal disorder, and it's causing problems, and professionals would know that. And your counseling is probably not going to remedy the hormonal disorder that the person is having. The body excretes chemicals that make you happy and make you peaceful. Endorphins, oxytocin, what are the other ones? Endorphins, oxytocin, dopamine, like that, when you do certain things. But actually in some people, serotonin, their bodies don't produce enough and they get depressed. It's like, and you preach to them and they go, yeah, I know. It's like preaching to a person who's tired, who didn't sleep enough. And your preaching doesn't make them not tired. They just need to sleep. So there could be hormone imbalances. So that's my experience. So, the principle is, you do what is necessary for your spiritual life. If it'll help it, then do it. If it's not against the principles, if it doesn't distract you or deviate you, then you do it. And you look at the result. And if the result is now, I'm more absorbed in Krishna consciousness, then that's good. Why not? One might say, well, maybe the Vedic aspect of psychology we should be more inclined towards than the Western. Maybe the Ayurvedic more than the allopathic, but that's a good argument. But sometimes you just have to do what is available in that moment. Okay, so Nirmal Chandra says, can you comment on the correlation between self-worth and self-love? Yeah, if you don't have one, you won't have the other. They go together. Well, if I feel unworthy, then why would I love myself? Because I'm not worthy of the love. So, it's all the same thing. And as we discussed yesterday, that these things can happen if one grows up in an environment where they're made to feel that something's wrong with them, or they're not good enough. Or in some cases, children have been made to feel that they were unwanted. Their parents told them, we didn't want you, you were an accident. Not only that, that's bad enough, but some parents actually treat them you're just an unwanted kid. We already had 2 or 3 kids, and then you came along, and so it's just like, let's get this over with and get you grown up and get you out of the house. That's how they're made to feel. So you could imagine if you grew up that way, right, your life would be difficult, don't you think? Or for many people, it would be quite difficult. So if you're in that state, you definitely need to do something about it. And what I would say to you, emphatically, you need to do something about it, and that is your service to Krishna and your spiritual master, to do something about that, because that is holding you back. It's a big problem for you. So if you lack self-worth, you lack self-love. If you lack self-love, you lack self-worth. It's just different nuances of the same thing. Okay, so we didn't get to read today what I was going to read, and we'll see you tomorrow. We won't. Well, if you're in Ireland, we'll see you tomorrow. What happened was, I had told you that I was going to try to broadcast 2 classes at the same time, but the internet we have here is so bad it couldn't do it. So. And you wouldn't have been able to hear anything anyway. So, we won't see you tomorrow. If you fly to Ireland, you can see. You have to fly into the Ireland temple and you can be in the class. I think we're doing it tomorrow in Ireland. Okay, so thanks for listening, and be in touch. I put out, if you're not on our WhatsApp group, get WhatsApp and go on my website and join, because I'm putting out, now that I'm back in Alachua and I have an office, you know what's so good about this office? It's not in the house. It's outside the house. The house is up there. Do you realize how much I can get done in an office? It's not in the house. It's just like amazing. So I'm putting out what I'm doing. What I started doing is, when I'm studying every day, I'm taking bits and pieces from what I'm studying and I'm putting that on WhatsApp. So there's a lot that's coming out on WhatsApp, and I'm putting out some audio, and I may put out some video, Because as you can see, like, the lighting's pretty decent here. This is just morning time, and I have 2 good-sized windows. So I could very easily put out some video also, and just try to inspire you all. So if you're not on that WhatsApp group, you can go to my website, mahatmadas.com, and get on it. And we're expanding it, and we're developing a new system so we can have unlimited numbers of people on it, and you can share it with other people. And I just want to share with you things that I think are essentially important for your Krishna consciousness. And if you like this video, share it. There's a lot of important things in it. This video, all these videos, ultimately, even though they're done on Facebook, they go on my YouTube page. So you can, if you like, you can join the YouTube page. And then whenever something new comes, you can get it there. That's, if you want to see past videos, that's the best place to go. If my humble servants are putting it on YouTube regularly, like they're supposed to. And Hare Krishna. We will see you next Saturday morning, unless we get inspired to do something before that, and we'll give you a notice, and we'll go for it. Hare Krishna.